There's a wonderful picture on your website of your father performing, and I assume it's yourself at a very young age standing on a chair to reach up to a microphone. How well do you remember those days?
Well, that picture was taken, I guess well, I got a guitar when I was 11, started singing with him when I was 4, so it looked like I was probably 11 or 12, so it was probably within the first year I'd gotten a guitar. Oh, I remember well. I do. You couldn't touch me. Well, I knew I was hot.
So you were pretty comfortable on stage right from the start?
Well, when you start that young, we only get fear as we get older. So at 4, singing in front of people, I had the security of my dad, and singing was a natural thing. So, yeah, I was quite comfortable on stage, I think. Like a lot of child performers who kept that as a career, you actually feel more comfortable sometimes on stage than off stage, because on stage you feel more in control as an adult than when you get off stage. You're vulnerable like anybody else to what life has to offer. But on stage you feel pretty more in control because that's where you've lived most of your life.
Do you remember a time when it began to dawn on you, or when it really started to sink in what an important figure your father was in music?
Boy, that really comes. I think it hits later in your years. The people he knew, I run into people today who remember Dad, but there's a picture of me sitting on Paul Robeson's knee. I wish I could remember that. Meeting Joe Louis, who gave me a pair of boxing gloves through my dad when I was a kid. The Roosevelts, of course. You kind of just take things for granted, and then as you get older as an adult, you look back and you realize I was a much older man before I realized just what his influence was in music and how that what he did took him around the world, and the people he met. Princess Margaret sitting on the floor listening to him sing in England. I mean, these things just were they had to sink in. I had to be a much older person. I'm talking 20s, 30s. Truly.
What about some of the musical contemporaries of your dad? Do you recall coming across any of those growing up?
Well, I remember Sonny Terry and Broughton McGee. You're aware of them? Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Of course. Well, in my 20s, I went on my own in 1961 as a solo performer. Before that, all my singing was with the old man, although my acting, most of my acting was without him. My first Broadway show was with him, but the rest was without him. But I was with Sonny and Brownie, and actually I was not performing at the club, but I was in town to hear them, and so I was saying who I was, and they were saying, well, listen, we were working with your father the day you were born. We were one of the first people to ever see you. When I was born and my father found out, they were recording or rehearsing something, and they came with my father up to Mother Cabrini Hospital in the Bronx, and they saw me for the first time. I didn't know this until I met him as an adult. And running into Pete Seeger and doing work with him, and him telling me how he got, how famous Pete is for getting people to sing along and all. But he got that from, in the 40s, hearing my old man do On Top of Old Smoky, and how he got the people to sing along. I didn't know that. Oscar Brand from Canada, now of course in New York City. There's so many people who learn little things from Dad. It's just so very nice to meet my father's contemporaries as an adult and have them give me stories of what little influence he did on them, or as a performer or as a person. It has been and people, not performers so much, but people who've seen my dad over the years will say, I'm sure you're tired of hearing this. You're never tired of hearing this.
No.
To know that your parent touched someone with their music, you're always nice. It's always wonderful to hear that. So Charlie Bird, learning, what song was it? Maybe, I think it was St. James Infirmary, maybe. I can't remember now the song when I met Charlie Bird years ago, how he said Dad influenced him to learn a particular song because of the way he did it. It's nice. So it runs the gamut from, Dizzy Gillespie, how highly he thought of Dad and how close they were. And so they were jazz musicians, they were folk musicians, who back then it was a little smaller world back in the 40s, so they tended to know each other a little better than things are now, a little more widespread. But it's just, you never get over hearing from people you don't expect and knowing how their lives had crossed.
Must have been a wonderful feeling of pride recently when your dad was honoured with his own postage stamp.
You know what I'm saying? And I talk to people, and I now even go into junior high and high schools. I started a program on that because I know when they started putting people on stamps here in the States, there would be some faces on there I did not know, and I wondered, who are they? Why do they come from? Especially if they were black, and I thought, well, but who are they? So I knew that would be the same thing with my old man. So I thought, well, let me go into junior high and high school, which can be a hard audience for a non-mainstream acoustic performer, and tell them the story of why they put Josh White on a stamp. You don't know the man, but why they put him on a stamp? Well, let me tell you his story with talk and music, and you decide whether he should be put on the stamp. Because when the United States Post Office called me, they didn't tell me why. They just said, we're thinking of putting your father on a stamp, and it's a don't let anyone know. It's I can't remember the expression. Need to know basis. Mm-hmm. And so they never really told me, and I can just surmise why, and I do believe that he and Paul Robeson were maybe the only two black men in the 30s and 40s and through their lives that would use the platform of entertainment to speak on the racism of this country. You would have poets who did it, but a lot of musicians, a lot of my dad's contemporaries, did not touch the topic. And it's understandable. Back then, even if you were in show business, to those redneck kind of people, you were just another black skin, and if you got too uppity, you might find yourself the recipient of some bad treatment. But my dad and Paul Robeson were the two big names in the business back then who spoke on it. And besides the other things, his humanitarian efforts, trying to raise money for war bonds and X, Y, and Z, I think that was a very distinguishing mark in his career that I think showed one of the strong reasons why he was considered and was also one of the pioneers of folk music here in the 30s and 40s. Very proud.
Was your dad forthcoming to you with a lot of career advice when you were setting out yourself?
My old man, I've got 4 sisters. My old man told us 2 things. One, if we wanted, well, I was in the business because I was 4, but if by chance, because all my sisters sing, if you're going to sing a song, make sure you believe it. Because if you don't believe it, those you're singing to will not believe it. Mm. And 2, if you're going to sing, make sure they can understand what you sing. If they can't understand what you're saying, how can they get into the song and hear it and get into what you're trying to say? Those were 2 stipulations my old man said. Other than that, he didn't say do blues, he didn't say be like me, I could do whatever I wanted. But those 2 things were important. And of course, in his career, he too was criticized for being articulate. And here's a man that went to the 6th grade. And he thought it was important to work on diction and making sure you could understand. And I think to a lot of blues aficionados, he wasn't rural sounding enough. And this is only because he wanted to benefit himself, to raise himself up, and to make sure you understood. And so he was criticized for that, which is fine. I mean, someone's going to criticize you about something. And if it's because you speak well, well, too bad.
Yeah.
And it was also a time in America where you in the 40s, I was born in 1940, that being able to hold yourself and speak well also showed those people, as it were, that no, everyone doesn't speak in that dialect. Get away from that stereotypical, they all sound that way, they all look kind of, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So as a black artist, you almost were carrying yourself, but you were representing your race, and you wanted to make sure you represented yourself and your race into the best light, and to show again them that the only difference was the melanin in the skin. That's all.
Now, as you mentioned, you worked quite extensively as a child actor on Broadway and on television as well, I believe.
Yeah, I sure did. I was in 5 Broadway flops between 1949 and 1960, and I did a lot of live television. And being a Broadway actor, doing live television was, of course it could be scary, as the theater could be scary, but I've never done film, so I was always used to starting from A and going all the way to Z, not starting in M and then going back to B and then maybe to C and then eventually A. So it was a very natural progression, live television, and it was a great experience. And then for many, many years, for 23 years, I didn't do any acting. After the early 60s, one of the reasons on Broadway was there was not a lot of roles for a lot of young black actors. So a Clarence Williams III, a Billy D. Williams, they what's his name that won the Academy Award for Officer and Gentleman? I can't think of my friend's name right now.
Lou Gossett.
Lou Gossett,
yeah.
Jr. Lou Gossett also played and sang. I don't know if people know that. He played guitar and sang some. So I know them being primarily actors, they might have had a little more road to hoe, still doing their craft. I could fall back on doing my music more, which is what I did, and didn't do any more truly acting until we did a one-man show about my dad in 1983 here in Michigan.
Growing up as a child actor, was there time outside of that for you to have a normal childhood? Were you able to make friends outside of the fields of entertainment?
Well, in Harlem, where we lived and grew up, life was pretty normal. I didn't even go to a regular school. I went to a private school in New York City called Professional Children's School, and not where I grew up. It was down in mid-Manhattan. And it was for child actors, actresses, dancers. I went to school with Elliot Gould. I went to school with Marvin Hamlish. I went to school with Leslie Uggams. I went to school with Tuesday Weld. I went to school with, so in one way that was kind of different. And we only had four hours of school, from 10 o'clock in the morning to 2 in the afternoon. And the school was recognized by all the agencies, be they movies, be they Broadway, be they commercials. And you walked into school, and if there was a call box, and if there was a call for whatever you did, and it described your age, you could go get an excuse from school, go and audition. If you got the if you got the part, you could be on correspondence. Sandra Dee was in my class just before the Gidget movies started. So I had that part, and then I go home, and I was just, my nickname is Donnie. And at home, I was just Donnie around the block with the guys, and we played stoop ball and stick ball and things like that. So there was a balance there that if you don't know anything else, that's just how it was. I kind of would have liked to have, looking back, I'm double jointed in the back, and I loved gym and gymnastics, and I would have loved to have gone to a school that it would have had gym, but I never had that. But every day, my life was relatively normal, though it wasn't normal, as it were.
So was it the folk music revival of the early 60s that inspired you to put acting on the back burner and give music a shot?
No, again, it was primarily because there just wasn't a lot of good roles for a lot of young black actors. And then in '61, when I started on my own, that just took on its own life. And though we had a manager who would keep their eyes out for gigs, the music started taking off, and I did not push to do acting. If an acting gig came along, you'd always be put up for it. But I always had the music, and I was enjoying getting my foothold there as a solo performer.
Right, so a relatively easy choice to make. There was no dilemma facing you which way to go.
Not at all. Not at all. You vacillated between the two all my life, so it was nothing new. And then being on your own and not singing with the old man when I went out in '61, that was you kind of, it was all you then, not just you doing part of the time on stage, and that was kind of cool.
Did you feel any pressure on you at the time to live up to your father's name?
No, because my old man made me feel comfortable enough to be me. Mm-hmm. There were people who tried to make me feel, try to give me a little pressure. But my old man did not give me pressure, so I was not going to allow other people. But what would happen would be there would be certain joints that I would work before the old man died, where they would try and capitalize on my name, and let's say on the marquee in 100% type, it would say Josh White, and then in like 30% type, Junior. So we had to make sure in our contract that the J in Junior had to be 100% type, just like the rest, and the R no smaller than 60%, because it's not fair to people see the name and think it's my old man and come in and then see it's me. I mean, let them know it's me, and if they're going to come in, maybe just to see what the old man's son can do, it's up to me to keep him there. Sure. So some did try and capitalize on the name, but with me, I really didn't feel that much pressure to do or be. I know when I was younger, I did not do a lot of blues. I know when I first started out, most of the music I did were songs I did with Dad, and some that I learned on my own, of course. I never did a lot of blues, though, because I think when I was younger, I always felt like if I did a blues, I sounded like a young kid trying to make you think he had problems. I didn't have that. I just sounded like a young kid to me.
Yeah.
And then there was then I going out on my own, I ran into some of my contemporaries, although I'd been in the business longer than them. And then there was a man named Bob Gibson, who wrote Abilene, Abilene, prettiest town you ever seen. And he played 12-string guitar. And he was the reason why I got my first 12-string guitar in '64 or '65, and I started kind of leaning on the kind of stuff he did, and did less and less of that which I grew up with. And then as years go by, it was always there. Then I started combining the two, and at this point in time in my life, whenever you come to see me, I give you who I am and what I do, but there's always a portion in any show I do of my old man's music, how he did it, and I do it exactly the way he did it, or as close as one will hear today of someone doing it. The licks, even the phraseology, for those who may remember Dad and would like to sit back and listen, or maybe to expose my dad to those who never got a chance to hear him.
I believe you became quite a fixture on the college circuit. Did you feel a special affinity with college audiences?
1 second, please.
Sure.
I'm sorry. I'm talking long distance in Australia.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. Somebody just knocked on my door. Say it again, please.
You were quite a fixture on the college circuit over there. Did you feel a special affinity with college audiences?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I think from 63 or 4 to 1979, I lived on college campuses. I lived there. It was a fine time. I loved it. Yes, I related to them. They related to me, and I probably did. I don't know. I can't even. The figure may sound strange, but 150 a year.
Yeah.
For all those years, it was great fun. It was great fun. I still have directors of schools today that we're still friends and we speak. And now some of the people I sing to in college, I'm singing to their kids.
Yeah. I guess you would have found a lot of lifelong fans from those audiences. I guess you probably still have people come up to you today to say they saw you back in '64 or something.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I truly do. I truly do. In fact, there was one club, as my father had a club in New York City that he worked from 1939, 1940 to 45 called Cafe Society in the Village. My club was called the Raven Gallery here in Michigan. And when I was there in Australia, back in the 80s, I ran into someone who saw me at the Raven. I'll go all over this country, and I'll always find someone over those years who saw me at this particular club. So yes, it's wonderful that you touch someone and they remember, and they come up and let you know. It's great.
I've heard you describe yourself as a song interpreter first and foremost. So songwriting has never been a priority for you?
It's never. I've never tried to make myself be a singer-songwriter. Again, when I was growing up, listen, I was around before Dylan. Until Dylan, no one expected you to write your own songs.
Yeah.
He made it bad for me. There was Woody Guthrie in my dad's time. But truly, being an interpreter was fine. And I have written songs, but it's inspiring. When it comes to me, it's more, to me, and this is just my way of looking at things, in a physical, metaphysical or spiritual way of looking. Anyone who has a talent, whatever that talent is, to me, it comes more through us than from us. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So these songs have come through me, the few that I've done, came through me for sometimes no apparent reason. But the music and the words sort of come together, and I'm very happy with them. And most of my songs talk about, well, let us say what's going on in our world today. This terrible thing that we're all facing. Songs that unite people, that make you look within, or help try to make you look within on a spiritual nature. And I feel very comfortable, not feeling that I have to write, and knowing that I can interpret someone's. We have such good writers out there. You don't need me. I'll interpret. I don't mind.
I'm sure a piece of work that you're very proud of, and you did touch on it briefly before, was the play that was a tribute to your father and his life and music. Can you just tell us a little bit about the format of it and the structure of the play?
Well, okay. My manager at the time, Doug Yeager, ran into this gentleman, and when Barbra Streisand did A Star Is Born years and years ago, She and John, her partner at the time, were looking for other projects that they could produce, and we thought, well, let's do maybe a story of Josh White. We knew there was a movie about Leadbelly. We knew there had been a movie about Woody Guthrie, and neither one of them didn't do very well at the box office. But we thought, well, maybe a story of Josh White, so my manager had found this young man who had been in Hair. He's a singer-songwriter who maybe would be willing to write the script. It turns out that this guy, when in college, had booked my dad and myself at his school and loved the old man. So it was sort of a labor of love that he took it upon himself to write this play. And we got together and did some more extensive information about Dad and compiled songs of his that chronicled his life. And we were going to present it to Barbra Streisand and her production company, and we talked to Billy D. Williams because he'd done the movie with what was that first movie with the girl with the Supremes? God, I can't think. About Billie Holiday.
Ah, yeah, with Diana Ross, yeah.
Yes. Okay. So he was coming off that. He was very big, very handsome, and so we thought if his manager had said that they might like the project, and I figured, well, he would play Dad, I would do the soundtrack, and everything's fine. Well, that didn't go through. Then we thought of maybe a mini-series on TV. They were beginning to be quite popular, and sometimes there's a mini-series where you may not know the subject matter, but if we can grab you with the first one, maybe you watch this whole thing. So we're thinking mini-series. And again, we weren't sure who might play the old man, but of course I would do the music, and that fizzled out somehow. And then we got to a play. So I kind of won the role by default because there's no one who could play the old man's guitar except me. And so in 1983, we decided that we would do this. And I was a little nervous because, again, it had been 23 years since I had been on stage as an actor, although I'd been a solo performer for all that time, and I did know the subject matter. So that is what we did, and the play, Josh White comes back and tells you about his life and how it starts off, because my father led blind black street musicians from the age of 7 to try and help bring money to this poor family in South Carolina. My grandfather was a minister, and be ye white or black in the 20s, you didn't make a lot of money, so he was also a handyman and did whatever he could to feed his family. And Blind Man Arnold said that my dad would get paid $4 a week, and that's a good piece of change back then to help the family. So I first of all come out as Blind Man Arnold with this big coat on that had your pots and pans and everything that he would need on the road. And I mime talking to the 7-year-old Josh, who takes me to his house to meet his mother to see if she would say yes to him leading me. And then I go through a curtain and I quickly change, and I come out as looking as Josh would have looked in the early 40s, I guess. I had to cut off my beard, which was traumatic. I had not cut off my beard. I mean, I grew my beard in 1972, so to have it cut off in the first time in 83, and I had to put a wig on and thin down my mustache. I never understood why my old man had such a thin mustache. It was too much trouble. Anyway, and then Josh will go and he tells you about his life, and you mime everyone else in the show, and it was quite a wonderful experience for me to tell his story. And we did it between 83 and 86 or 7. Did it at 3 different theaters. Have not done it yet. Again, we wanted to bring it there to Australia. My dad had a lot of fans there. He loved Australia. Bring it to England, where he was loved, and Sweden. We tried to get it into Chicago, and we wanted to do it it being a one-man show, that it was one of the things where I could come to you. It wasn't one that this was destined for Broadway so much, but a traveling show. And I found out then how theaters can be backed up for years with acts coming in. So, one thing led to another, and I have not done it really since. But there's always a possibility of it coming again. And now with the new book out on my dad by Elijah Wald, Josh White Society Blues, and with the stamp, interest again getting stronger, who knows, the play may come back again.
Oh, that'd be great. Something I also noticed on your website was the Glory Bound series of tribute concerts. Can you tell us a bit about those?
Now, that was something that maybe 2 years ago, Oscar Brand, we put together a show because to do a benefit in the Midwest, and Oscar put it together. It was called Woody and Me. So we being Oscar Brand, Tom Paxton, Odetta, Richie Havens, myself, Gene Ritchie's two boys who play a lot with Oscar, and we had a few musicians, and we just kind of talked about Woody and Jack Elliott, of course, and each of us would do a song or two of Woody's, and do a song that we chose to do, and it was recorded for public broadcasting, and after that we thought it might not be a bad little idea if Odetta and Jack and I might do a little tour, and Glory Bound would be very interesting because Odetta had been doing songs of Leadbelly and was about to do a Leadbelly album. So you would have the three of us. You have these two icons of folk music and Little Me here, and you have Odetta, who could do a half an hour of Leadbelly music. Rambling Jack Elliott could do, the whole millennium of Woody Guthrie, and then me representing the music of Josh White. So we each do a half hour of their musics, and then at the end we get back together as a trio and do 4 or 5 sing-along songs that each one of these people did and have the audience sing along. And we just put that together, and that is a lot of fun. We're about to do our third one in Cambridge, Massachusetts next month. We've done 2 already, and we plan to do a whole lot more. And it's nice because all of us are solo performers to travel with other performers. Not travel so much, but to meet and spend some time with, because now everything is so fast. Unless you're doing a festival or something, you really don't see performers like in the 60s. You worked the coffee houses. Times would lapse, and you would be able to spend a little time with whoever is coming into the club after you or before you. We had a time to hang out. Now it's not the case as much.
Away from the stage, something you've also done in recent times was an instructional video for guitar. How did that come about, and how did you find the experience of teaching to a camera?
Well, they dragged me to it in a way. After my father was put on the stamp, there's a man named Artie Trum. He and his brother Happy, good folk singers, been around for years and years, and they started this instructional video years ago, and it's a wonderful idea. I don't know if they have anything like that there, where they will get musicians, whatever they do for music, whether you played slide guitar or you finger pick or you flat pick or you sing a kind of song, or you go in front of the camera and you teach people how to play it, and you buy this, and for the rest of your life you have a chance to learn this style of playing whatever the instrument at your own leisure. And since I do not read or write music, and I do not consider myself a teacher, I didn't feel comfortable. But Artie felt that it would be, well, I'm good in front of a camera because, again, I lived in front of him most of my life, so that wasn't too hard. And whenever I do music, it's with an entertainer, it's not always just the instrument they play or the song they sing or how they sing it. It's the interaction with the people, and I love to interact with people. So talking to someone, you always look at the camera, and you don't see a lot of people. You see one person, and you speak to that one person, and that one person receives that. They don't feel like you're talking to someone else, that you're talking right to them. And so I just took it very slow, and I'd do the song and almost show the performance of it, and then I go back and take you slowly with the right hand and left hand how the song was put together by my father. It's wonderful to have two different cameras on your left and right hand, so they can see. Lots of times, I'll watch performers on TV, and the director just doesn't know how to film an instrumentalist. They'll be looking too much at, I want to see the hands going, and they're showing me his mouth. That's fine, but give me a split screen so I can see him singing, but let me see what his hands are doing. So this is the one thing in homespun video. They make sure you can see, of course, because of what they do, you can see what the hands are doing. And it turned out to be a great thing, a very comfortable thing to do. But I never would have initiated it on my own.
It's an excellent concept. I guess you would have loved to have a facility like that available to you when you were learning yourself.
Well, yeah, it's still there. I mean, I'm undisciplined. That's the one thing that I sort of feel sad about as an instrumentalist, because it was more of a managerial decision at 11 for me to get a guitar, because I've been singing with Dad since 4. I think my dad and or our manager at the time, had they waited maybe another year for me to ask for a guitar, it would have been different. But I was given a guitar to learn because it looked cute too, but I didn't want to play. I enjoyed hearing him play, I enjoyed watching him, but I didn't want to play. So from the age of 11 until 21, I didn't really sit down and learn the guitar like I could have. I learned, that gave me the basic chords, so I would learn certain songs, but I did not sit down and really spend X amount of hours a day learning. So when I went out on my own in '61, and it was a necessity, more of a necessity then, because I wasn't doing just part of the show, I was doing the whole show, I found the love for the guitar, but absolutely no discipline. So I could still, I've got some videos here today of some blues guys, some little things I want to learn. I just haven't gotten around to it. I'm not a very disciplined person. I do love the instrument. I mean, I would have been a better guitarist, but I do okay.
Did any of your children grow up to turn to music or acting?
I've got my oldest biological son, because I have 6 children. I've got 4 stepkids and my 2 boys. Mm-hmm. My oldest biological is an actor and a mime.
Oh yeah.
But no one else. All the other kids, my other biological son is a chef, and my stepchildren, I think my youngest stepchild can carry a tune. The other 3, they don't even make it with the bucket. They can't even sing in the bucket. But they are appreciators of music.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah. And just before we wind up, Josh, what is the extent of your touring schedule these days? And how much of the year would you spend on the road?
Well, every year varies. One thing that sort of keeps me closer to Detroit, during the school year, about 10 years ago, I became involved with the Detroit Historical Museum through a woman I met named Rhonda Douglas, an actress from the Pacific Northwest who moved here because her husband was a scientist and started working for Ford. And she had studied a way of teaching that came from England from a woman named Dorothy Heathcott. And it's called process drama, where you, just to prove that you can use the arts as a learning tool. And what you do is with initially how we have worked it with role-playing music and imagination. We go into a classroom and we teach history and social studies by the kids becoming who they're learning about. And we do it from the 3rd grade up, and we've done it with retired citizens. And what you do is, if you want to learn about, let us say, here in the States, about the Underground Railroad, the slavery times here, we will go into a classroom and say, and it's an asking program. we'll ask the kids, do you mind going back in time? Well, in order to do that, do you mind playing the role of adults, because there are no fifth graders in the story? So you're asking them, because most kids are told what to do in school, not asked.
Yeah.
And then we say we're going to go back, and they become at first abolitionists. And so it's what it is slightly structured improvisation with kids to learn about a piece of history. If you are an abolitionist and you walk a mile in their shoes and know why it was secret, how it was secret, and how you have to make secret signals when you meet on the street so no one knows who you are, and you just get involved in that person back then making those decisions. If you can go down and help somebody, but you have this farm, how can you go away? What can you do? And the kids you use your imagination. And then we transform them, and we say we're all going to play different roles. Then we go down south on a train, and then we ask them if you don't mind being slaves now on the plantation to carry the story forward. Then they're the slaves on the plantation. You kind of treat them kind of gruffly and give them work to do, and we sing the songs, and we sing songs that have double meanings, and they have to interpret what these meanings mean. If you're going to follow the drinking gourd, all the words to that, what does that mean? The white man thinks we're just singing a song, the plantation owner, but what we're doing is telling each other where to meet, how to meet, where to go. And then it's banding together and running away as a slave, and then we have a thing called a tableau, which is like a frozen picture in a group, and we'll ask them, please, you to get together and decide as a group on the escape. Show us a moment on that escape. It could be a dangerous moment or a safe moment. It could be in the woods, in the water, in a safe house, in a barn. You decide as a group, and then the rest of the groups, when we say 1, 2, 3, freeze, you hold it, and the rest of us will try and look at your position to decide if we're looking at a safe moment or a dangerous moment and where it's taking place. Then we get them to Canada and say it's 5 years later and ask them to write back to the plantation where you came from. Let's say you write back to somebody you left behind and tell them how you're doing. So they run the gamut of the whole experience of that period, and you never forget it. If you experience it, you never forget it. And that's what story living is doing. And so I've been doing that for 10 years, so that will keep me in the Michigan area doing schools all over Michigan, and then I'll go out and do my gigs. So years vary. But I'm glad to be able to, never being a teacher, here I've got my dad's video out, but also I've gone into schools and helped younger people understand history so they don't forget it. When they feel a part of it, when you learn while having fun, you don't forget. Yeah. And I think this is a very, very important thing to learn, so I don't want to give that up. So I combine the two. I combine my traveling around and doing gigs here and there and teaching here in Michigan.
And just to finish up, what would be your standard advice to young players just starting out?
Practice, practice, practice. And the thing is to remember, to follow that inner, to hopefully find your individuality. I was able to find myself in the shadow of my dad, who made me feel comfortable to do it. To admire whomever inspires you, but to try and find your own voice. And another piece of advice my dad gave me, which I give to people, that when you learn a song, especially if it's not yours, because if you write it, maybe it's a different situation. But when you want to learn a song that you want to perform, if you are of the mindset of being an entertainer and not just a performer, there are lots of people who are just performers. You come to see what I do. I'm not there to truly try and entertain you. You've come to hear what I do. But if you want to be an entertainer, then you have to have contact with the people. And so what the old man told me to do, what I tell people, when you learn a song, you think you got it, go into a room, turn off the light, and play that instrument until you don't have to look down at your hands. And then when you do it and you're on stage, the audience does not see you most of the time with your head down looking at your fingers. You may look out and if you feel comfortable, because a lot of performers don't always feel comfortable seeing a lot of people. I love the eye contact, that you can keep your face forward and make the contact, or at least let people see your face. But always learn your song. Of course, there are times when you look down, but don't spend the majority of the time you are singing a song looking at your fingers. And always look forward and follow your heart. I don't learn a song because it's a popular song to learn. I learn a song because it says something to me. It touched me, and I want to share that. If it touched me, and you and I are the same, I think it may touch you. Let me give it a shot. I want you to feel this. The love of what you do will shine when you find the music you want to do. Don't do the music just because it's a popular thing to do. Let your inner self tell you. It'll tell you. It'll lead you. So listen to yourself a lot.
That's sound advice to finish up with. Josh, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an honour to speak to you, and I do appreciate it, especially considering the fact you're a bit road weary at the moment.
I appreciate the call. I thank you so much.
And the 80s was a long time ago, so it's you're well overdue for a trip down under. We'd love to see you here.
You know it. You know it. I hope to get back there very soon.
That would be wonderful. Thanks again, Josh.
Thank you so much.
Take care. We'll speak soon.
We'll take care. All righty.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.